Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. And I got a real doozy for you today. Today I want to talk about a short story that I read because it is Short Story Tuesday after all. And as I often do, I sometimes visit children's stories aimed at young kids. Because it's important to reflect on the stories that we tell children as well as the stories that we tell other adults. And today's story is all about an ogre, a familiar green ogre. I am referring to Shrek by William Steig, which was published in 1990. For those who don't know, William Steig was a children's author and illustrator who lived throughout the 1900s. He started getting his work published in the 1930s, and some of his works were published over time, and this continued until he got Shrek published, Shrek published, and then it drew the eye of Hollywood, which was then turned into a movie, and then a series of movies with Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, and Shrek Forever After, which probably makes him one of the more successful authors of all time, getting just like one book turned into like 4 different movies, and it being beloved in pop culture because everyone talks about Shrek, and people also really love Shrek 2, even if the third one and the fourth one are kind of forgettable or I dare say bad at times. But yeah, that's pretty much who William Steig is. He also illustrated, so you see some of his illustrations in this book, and I'll put them up throughout here because they're worth looking at. But yeah, I'd say he's a very interesting author, and like the idea of Shrek being a book like aimed at children, it has always like kind of fascinated me because this is not the first time I have read it. It's something I turn to somewhat often because I can't believe that someone actually wrote this and that that it was aimed at children and people approved it because it subverts a lot. But I'll talk about that later. Without further ado, let's talk about Shrek. I will do a summary and analysis and we will move on from there. So Shrek focuses on an ugly green ogre living in a swamp with his parents. At the start of the story, the parents announce that it's time for Shrek to go out on the world and do some Shrekking, ogering up of his own, so they kick him out, and he just starts wandering through the world. He encounters a witch who tells him a fortune where he will encounter a talking donkey, and he'll fight a knight, and he'll encounter a princess that he'll marry, and Shrek seems pretty positive about all that, so he sets out to make this fortune become a reality. As he's walking about, he begins scaring peasants and animals with his scariness and his ugliness, as he notes. The concepts of lightning and thunder set about trying to destroy him, and a lightning bolt shoots at Shrek, but he manages to eat it, which is somewhat unusual. He then stumbles upon a dragon, which he fights and beats, and then he falls asleep and has a dream where children are gallivanting all around him, and this is a nightmare to Shrek because Shrek does not like the things that we like. He is quite different. And then he stumbles across a talking donkey, which he does not seem to like very much. And the donkey tells him that there is a knight and a princess that he'll guide Shrek to, and then Shrek can marry the princess. And he stumbles across the knight, who is guarding the castle that the princess is in, and the knight's like, "Over my dead body," and Shrek's like, "Yes, over your dead body," which I think is very hilarious kind of phrasing there, and Shrek manages to defeat the knight, and he walks into the castle, finds the princess, discovers that she too is ugly just like him, and they get married in front of a crocodile priest and live unhappily ever after, which is this story's version of a positive ending. In terms of analysis, there are a few things worth talking about as it pertains to this story. The first thing is, as I noted earlier, the subversion. The how this is subverting conventional fairy tales, and you can see in my description of it, but also if you read it yourself, which I'll put a link to in the description, you can see how it subverts that classic fairy tale structure. Because usually you have a knight going on a quest, fighting smaller things before they encounter like a big bad boss person, defeating that, and then rescuing a princess, and they live happily ever after. But this subverts it in that the monster in this story, the big bad monster that would be the end boss usually, is seen as the hero. And the concept of ugly is seen as good, whereas usually in fairy tales, any ugly creature that you come across, like an ugly stepmother or like an ugly witch or something like that, those are the identifiable bad people. But here, William Steig is noting, oh, hey, Shrek is ugly, and he might do some pretty weird things, but he is still good. He's the good guy, the protagonist of this story. And the knight in this story, who's supposed to be heroic and protective and whatnot, the knight is the bad person in this story, the antagonist. And even further, like, what is the knight doing guarding this castle? It really seems like the knight is trying to prevent the princess from coming out. But given that, like, the princess is hideous and ugly, maybe the knight is trying to protect the world from something. But also, you shouldn't really keep people locked away in castles or something like that. And then you have the annoying talking animals, whereas usually in fairy tales, the talking animals would be positive and happy or like charming or something like that. And here you just have a talking donkey that Shrek's like, I don't want to listen to you anymore. Just take me to the castle with the princess. And so you can see how Steig is subverting the classic fairy tale structure here, making really the things that we would see as monsters the heroes, and making the heroes the antagonist of this story. And I really like that, because it's something that you don't really see that often in fiction, because we can say, oh, these are the designated good guys in every story, but that might not actually be the case in real life. And so he's actually kind of priming young children to see, or to question, like, why we view certain people as bad or something like that. Like, he's not trying to get at racism or anything like that, but he is getting young kids who this is aimed at to question why we view some things as bad and some things as good. So questioning conventions here. Another thing that Steig touches upon here is embracing yourself, like being happy with who you are despite what you are. Shrek loves who he is despite him being a green, hideous ogre, as described by William Steig himself. In the story, Shrek even notes that he is tickled to be repulsive. So even though he knows that he's ugly and a monster, because in the castle, he sees his reflection and is like, a bunch of monsters in the Hall of Mirrors. So like, he knows he's repulsive. He's very aware of that, but he's happy with who he is. In essence, Steig is talking about self-confidence. He's touching upon the idea that everyone has their own beauty in different ways, their own thing that they should be happy about. Like, even if you think like, oh, this is a flaw for me, like Shrek is over here saying like, yeah, I'm flawed, but I'm happy with who I am. All of these aspects of myself are like part of me, and they make me the unique being that I am. Steig is putting that message out there for children. You don't need to be incredibly beautiful to be worthy. That you can be a little, like, have a bunch of weird habits, and as long as they're not hurting other people, or as long as it's not hurting you, then yeah, it's fine. Like that makes you who you are, and you should embrace yourself, much like Shrek is doing in this story. So a very positive message for children, because a lot of children deal with like, they think, oh, I'm ugly, or oh, I don't like this specific aspect of myself, especially as they grow up and turn into teenagers. And Steig is out here saying, you don't have to be the perfect depiction of what fairy tales say and like be a very beautiful princess to be worthy of love. Like, you can be like Shrek or the princess that he finds in this story and live a very happy life, which is such a great message there. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Shrek by William Steig. Not a whole lot to this short story, but it is a children's story, so there's plenty there. It's just you have to read it, and it's probably not like grand and wide scoping like you would find in a more adult short story. But there is a lot to think about here, and I am going to recommend that you go out and read it, much like every short children's story that I talk about on this channel, just because there's a lot to gain from reading children's stories and seeing what kind of messages we pass on to children. Very appropriate, very great messages in this story that I do recommend you go out and read. If you have any thoughts on this story, or you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a conversation about Shrek, either the book or the movie, if you want to do that. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can learn about this children's story if they don't know. I know a lot of people know about the movie, but many people don't know it's a book first. So it'd be worth getting more people aware of the book so that they could check it out. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and ogreish travels. Farewell.